Is world peace achievable? I think most of us would agree that you can make a good argument either way. On one hand, you look at the history of the world, you look at the history of nations, and you see war is a pretty much consistent, unfortunately consistent reality from the beginning of time. You have different interests, you have arrogance, people wanting control of resources, control of others, power, and therefore there's that inevitable conflict where one will try to dominate and control the other. And one of the ways that's done is through war. There's almost no period in history except short periods that you won't find some battle or war between countries, nations, communities, races, cultures. Yet at the same time, you can also make the argument that the fact is, when you look at the trajectory, war is far less today than it was in the past. Steven Pinker writes about it, with many good statistics showing how a decline of violence and war. It's not that we're living in a perfect world. There are clearly wars being fought as we speak. Besides the war in Ukraine and in Gaza, there's wars going on in Africa. There's wars that are maybe perhaps not active battle, but a cold war or essentially a powder keg, a combustion chamber that can explode any moment, whether it's Taiwan and China, whether it's the United States and Russia, whether it's Iran and who it considers to be its enemies. And yet, in the overall picture, things have gotten better and more improved. There are clear signs that certain humanitarian values, the idea of helping those that are less fortunate, has become extremely integrated and popular in our culture. I remember a number of years ago, just to one example, when there was the earthquake in Haiti, a very poor country. And nations around the world were competing to provide aid. In the past, when there was a natural disaster, an earthquake, a volcano, the neighbors would completely take advantage, pillage, rape, strip resources of the pitiful country that under that type of situation, completely taking advantage. So there are clear signs that there's another side to the human being and to the human race that seems to be inclining and going in the direction of achieving greater peace. Now we know the greatest wars ever fought, meaning with the greatest losses, was World War I and World War II in the previous century, more deaths than any other war. But on the other hand, post-World War II was also the most peaceful period in all of history and prosperity. Yes, some argue because we saw what we can do to each other. The argument can rage on because really it comes down to how we look at human nature. If we live in a world of survival of the fittest, and therefore the selfish gene is the dominant force, then yes, inevitably people are going to look at what is good for me and will go to war over others, just as white blood cells go to war against germs, and just as the evolution dictates that the stronger forces in nature will dominate over the weaker ones, the predator and prey. However, there's another side, the side of our better angels. If you take the biblical take on a human being, that we were created in the divine image, and ultimately our natural, inherent personality and psyche is divine, transcendent, then you can understand that there's great hope for mankind, that we're not trapped in perpetual battle or war or potential war and conflict, but that we can achieve a true harmony despite, or within, I would say, and because of the diversity of our personalities. The United States is an example. even with all the polarization today, which definitely makes people pessimistic of what the hopes are, where people are simply brainless in their complete dismissal, personality, character assassination, woke cancellation of others, and you can't even disagree in a civil way. But yet we live in a country called the United States, e pluribus unum, and it's a country that has withstood, we're talking over 250 years. Yes, there was a civil war, and we're still standing. Because some of the principles that the founding fathers established this country are based on actually the biblical principles of all human beings are created equal. And despite our differences, we all have the divine, absolute, unalienable rights of freedom and so on. And therefore, based on that, yes, we have to work on our differences and how you deal with differences. But that does not undermine that ability to be able to create a thriving and successful enterprise. And this country has proven it. Some argue, well, it's coming apart at the seams and we may completely destroy ourselves. There again, you can argue both directions. As you can probably assume, I am going to be leaning toward the direction of hope. Not just because I like to be optimistic, but because I do see, when you look at history, the big picture. When you're in the middle of a war, you're in the middle of a battle, it's very hard to see that. But if you look at the big picture, the bird's eye view, there's no question that the world the trajectory is going toward a more peaceful world. And ultimately, it's because the human beings, fundamentally, we are spiritual beings, and spirituality at the end of the day unites, does not divide. Materialism divides. Are we there yet? Obviously not. But we can be there, and we have a role to play in this regard. So it's interesting, with all this happening, here what's going on, the latest news in Gaza, Israel, America, the pressures, and you see literally a hatred that Hamas demonstrated that is, shocked us all. Actually, it doesn't really shock you, but still, it was still shocking in its atrocity and in its barbarism, and just plain, unadulterated hatred, with no room for discussion. And to be able to treat other human beings in ways that are beyond, even lower and more inferior even to savage behavior. So then you could say, where's the hope? Well, as I said, go back in history and you'll find religious wars and many other wars fought, and things have tamed. The Christian world, which ultimately gave birth to the United States, was once an extremely violent and aggressive and warlike movement. The Crusaders went to war by the sword. Yes, by the sword, to conquer the world in the name of Christianity, and especially Jews definitely suffered, but so did so many others. And yet, ultimately, what ended up happening, not a war that just was mutual destruction, that ultimately other forces, other voices emerged, a more divine voice, a more gentle one, that does appreciate the absolute values. Now, you can go from a process of elimination, in a sense, saying we have no choice, we have to do that, or else we'll destroy each other. In other words, even from a point of view of biological selfishness, coexistence is important for the gene because we need each other. Survival of the fittest also includes not to destroy each other. Even if you were to argue that, but I would go a step further. There is that noble side to us that does have a battle to fight because there's the other voice that has prevailed and will prevail. And I bring us back to, interestingly now in the calendar, the Jewish calendar, we're about to arrive to the 3,336th anniversary of the great event, the revelation at Sinai. The biblical story, after the Jewish people left Egypt, 50 days later, they received their mandate from God at Sinai, in the Sinai wilderness. And essentially laid out for the first time a documented blueprint for how to coexist, but not just coexist, how to complement each other, and how to bring peace in our personal lives, in our family, communal lives, and ultimately nations, races, and cultures as well. And when you understand and appreciate, especially the cosmic dynamic of it, it actually was a watershed moment. It was a watershed moment that gave the power to actually transform the inherent divisiveness and fragmentation of a material world into a unified whole. To just use a scientific example, we know science is a search for unity, for singularity, that despite the fact that there are so many different systems and so many different moving parts, there's some inherent unity, inherent laws that connect everything. Still searching for the unified field theory. But even understanding matter and energy as being reversible is a breakthrough. Because if you go back a few hundred years, definitely a few millennia, the world was seen as many different parts. Yes, there was a coordination, but then the unity that we understand today, especially the familiarity with quantum mechanics, is literally astounding. It's breathtaking. And it's also been expressed now, not just in theoretical science, but in technology. The fact that we can bridge the seemingly unbridgeable separation between time and space. And today you can be listening to me anywhere, anytime, any piece of information immediately accessible. And it's only accelerating. So that concept of unity, definitely on a technological and scientific level, is clearly a tremendous advancement. The final frontier is, can we bring that unity in our human choices in interacting with us? In other words, you could have all the machines and all the smartphones and all the computers in the world that unite us and eliminate, dissolve the separation between time and space, but you could still be at war with each other, because that's an emotional, psychological thing. But if you think of it as a trend, the fact of the matter is it's all connected. And that's what the mystics explained that began at Sinai. A process that would help us integrate the different forces that exist within our lives, and ultimately create that one hub, that one mission statement that synchronizes and coordinates between everything, cross-pollinates between it all. And indeed, by Sinai, we're told, the sages tell us, that God, in presenting his mandate, offered it to the nations of the world. Some rejected it. All rejected it, actually, because they weren't ready yet. The Jewish people accepted it. And they were a minority. And they paid heavy prices for it. The nations were not yet ready to accept, do not murder, do not steal. They still felt that there would be plenty of opportunity to do so, and so on. But the Jewish people were unique, that they accepted, but they knew, had complete faith and believed that ultimately it would affect everyone, the nations of the world as well. And that's why indeed it was offered to them. So Sinai began a process that would take thousands of years, correct? So when you look at the world today, once Sinai brought its so-called unifying energy into existence, now it would take time. There'd be growing pains, there'd be checks and balances, reality checks, market corrections, whatever terms you want to use, that ultimately the humans would come to understand that we're really all part of one larger whole. And we're greater for it. And the concept that I have to dominate over you or control you, subjugate you, for me to be more powerful, is flawed. Yes, ostensibly it sounds like that's what a bully does. That's what a tyrant does. That's when someone who wants to dominate. But you come to understand, take the human body as an example. Imagine one organ or one limb in the body decides it's going to dominate over all. The whole body will fall apart, including that limb and organ. So we need each other. The mind needs the heart needs the liver, they both need the liver, the lungs. I mean, I'm just throwing out some quick examples. So in other words, harmony within diversity is actually what makes us healthier people. So you'll say, 1 second, but there is hatred out there. Yes, there was hatred. Look, in Germany there was tremendous hatred. The Nazi ideology. And yet 80 years later, though there may be some neo-Nazis, but there was change in the schools, change in the attitudes. And today Germany is an ally with the very countries it went to war with, an ally with Israel and with the Jewish people as well. That doesn't mean there aren't differences of opinions and doesn't mean that it's all perfect, but it means that, you see, things can change. I have no doubt that the battle, maybe the final frontier battles between the Muslim world, feeling it needs to dominate and control Israel, or even the Western world, especially the more radical elements of Muslim fundamentalism, will be tamed. But we have to be wise about it. We can't just say, stop killing. Just become another Western country and become more passive. No, we have to stand for this and see it as a cause, as an ideology. That's what's lacking. Some of the radicals are extremely passionate, but the response to passion cannot be mediocrity, cannot be passivity. It has to be equally passionate. When the Founding Fathers established the United States, they were passionate. They were desperate, actually. That's why it drove them. There was a sense of urgency. We're living in a time now where all these battles are actually a wake-up call to create urgency in our lives. Wake up and come to realize that we have a war to fight. But what kind of war? A war against war. A war that demonstrates that spirit is stronger than matter. That you can disagree, but there's ways to disagree. Now, am I saying that I'm naively thinking it's going to change overnight? But if you don't have, it's not just a war against evil. If you don't have the side that appreciates these values, passionately realizing that it's our obligation to help influence the schools in the Muslim world, yes. We're not trying to take away anyone's sovereignty here, but hate cannot be taught, not to children, not to adults. I'm not here to lay out a peace plan, but I'm here to say that it's absolutely doable. And with the advent of technology, we have the tools to reach so many people, the exponential ability to unite and connect people, but you need people who are going to advocate the best defense is offense. Unfortunately, what you're hearing, at best, is putting out fires. Don't hurt us. Don't be aggressive. But you don't hear, not from any of the leaders, not business leaders, not political leaders, not world leaders, a vision that we are in this world together and we are sent here to be able to make this world into a place, yes, into a spiritual garden where we are different, but all connected to some higher power, all connected to a higher cause. That's what Sinai's message was. And patiently, it took time. A lot of blood has been shed, many wars, many lives lost. But progress has been made. We live in a far more peaceful world. I'm able to speak here. I would not have been able to speak 500 years ago without the permission and without the fear of being arrested or killed by just stating any ideas. We take for granted these blessings, but we have to make sure not to take them for granted because they're actually the blessings that we need to ride on and use to perpetuate this message to everyone possible. So is world peace achievable? Absolutely. Remember, at the end of the day, the world is made up of 8 billion people like you and I. If there's peace achievable between you and I, no matter how much we may have disagreements, then just multiply that, magnify that, amplify that. And none of us can say that we are not part of this that we don't carry part of this responsibility. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Absolutely. There's no room for the third undecided category. And what does that mean? That means wherever possible, we need to be proactive, not reactive, proactive. Take initiative. Speak to your friends, to family, to children, to strangers. Get the word out there. Because the only way to dispel conflict, discord, divisiveness is to bring light, to bring love, to bring unity, to bring a message of harmony. And with equal passion, I would say more than equal, with even more passion than those that are advocating hatred and disunity and divisiveness. So each of us has a role in that regard, whether it's a microcosmic role as in your own family, your own little circle, or because you may have influence over a large number of people. Doesn't matter. Each person in their way. But to be passive today is not an option. Now, of course, everyone's going to choose, and no one can dictate and tell you what to do. I'm sharing my opinion, of course. And I really feel very strongly about it. I feel that we have a real opportunity today because all the pieces are laid out. Everything is ready. We have the pipelines. We just need to act, and we need to connect in that fashion. I believe it will come from the bottom up, grassroots. It's hard for me to imagine how it's going to happen from the top down when you have politicians who are pandering, political, feeding the frenzy, feeding the divisiveness. You have a media that sees it like gladiators, likes blood, wants blood. It's what creates ratings. Entertainment. So it's going to have to come from you and I. It's going to have to come from people who are like-minded, but we have empowered by technology. I can say something and reach many people, as you can. Use your tools. Use your smartphone. Use your computer and spread the message. If you can compose it in beautiful terms, by all means. If not, find someone that has composed it. I may have composed it, and share it with others. And the more we do so, we can create a viral butterfly effect, domino effect, ripple effect, where we not just advocate, but we fight for this approach. So I'm very optimistic. I believe in the human race. I believe in the human spirit. I believe in the God within each of us, the divine image, which is what we need to access. So even when things seem sometimes difficult, seem challenging, seem like there's a setback, there's always that pilot flame, always that power waiting to be released. And it's up to us to do so. So much more to say on this, especially in our times. But suffice now for now, I'll definitely talk about it some more. This has been Simon Jacobson, Meaningful Life. MeaningfulLife.com is our website, our main platform. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Love to hear feedback, thoughts, comments, suggestions. And please share. Share. Let us all share. As we share, it will grow both quantitatively and qualitatively, exponentially. And we shall see peace in our times, complete peace. Peace that doesn't compromise everyone because you have harmony within diversity as we see it in nature itself and in the human body, in a healthy body. Be blessed and be well. Thank you so much.